Hey there. I keep getting this question about like how do I start my consulting practice? And I have been a consultant and self-employed for 16 years, so that's one reason I get that question a lot. But also we're in this time right now where a lot of people, quite honestly, are getting laid off or having a hard time finding a job. So if they're at this career peak, which happens in your like kind of 40s, 50s. It makes sense to consult or maybe to coach because it like seems like a super flexible and fulfilling job. And it can be depending on who you are, but I want to give you a little bit of insight on this also because I don't really like giving career advice. I like getting involved in someone's career path. Like if you tell me like, "Oh, I'm trying to do this and, do you know anyone?" Like, yeah, I'll help you. But I don't like going to get coffee to tell my career story, honestly. And that's part of being a self-employed or a business owner is you do have to be really careful with your time, especially when your time is billable. Because by the time I get in my car, I drive to meet you for coffee, I have coffee with you, and then I come back to my office, it's been 2 hours. And those are now 2 hours that I lost either doing billable work for a client or selling that billable work. And so if I'm going to go out to a meeting, and I only have so much energy for that, honestly, I can't do that all day, every day. I have to do the work, and also I have to sell the work, and I only have like a certain amount of networking energy. I need to save that energy for potential clients. So it's not personal. It's not that I don't like you, but I do have a lot of very close friends, and if I'm going to spend time just shooting the shit, I want to be with those friends of mine, right? So it's not about you. But then also there is a point at which like you're my competitor in the marketplace. And as much as people want to woo-woo out about abundance and all these things and like giving back, my giving back volunteer time goes to the neediest cases. I'm talking like homelessness, hunger, domestic violence, foster kids. That's where my volunteer time goes, okay? Not to helping people start businesses. And then also, well, it kind of does also. I'll come back to that. And yeah, I just don't enjoy giving career advice. My business is based on giving actual like executive coaching in terms of a package where we're actually leveling up an organization, but it's really business advice, consulting, and coaching. So that's what I enjoy doing and what I started a business for. However, I have created so much freaking content that you can get a lot of what I know through my book, Game Plan, through my other book, Exit Stage Right, through all the videos I've made, all the blog posts, Pregame on Demand, which is the paid content library of all of Pregame on how to start and grow a business. And so I'm not going to do it one-on-one. It's out there already, right? So anyway, let me give you a few things that I do want to tell you. So first of all, if you're deciding to even do this at all, the first thing is to understand the difference between a job, freelancing, and a business, and a hobby, right? So getting a job, you get to do the work. You're not in charge of everything. You don't have to wear all the hats. Yeah, you might be at the whim of somebody else's decisions, but if you want stability in terms of a salary, if you want benefits, if you don't want to have to worry about where the money's coming in from and all of that, probably that you want a job, okay? Now, if you want to freelance, if you want to do the work, but you want to decide your own schedule and maybe you want to have more vacation than you could get, first of all, you're going to have to charge enough freelancing that you do have the flexibility, but you also do need to do some sales. You're going to have to do some networking, do really good work, and make sure your network knows about it. So if you're not good at that, you do have to be able to do some of that in order to have a consistent enough business or charge so much, which I have known people who can charge so much that they have a lot of free time and energy, but there's very few people can sell like that. Then a business is running a business of what you do. All right, so there's a difference between doing what you do and running a business that does what you do, okay? So classic example from the E-Myth book, read it if you haven't, is if I love baking and I bake pies, Running a pie store is very different because I'm not going to be baking pies all day. I'm going to be at the whim of the customer. I got to run that space. I got to pay those bills. I got to create systems. I got to hire and fire people. And if I'm going to grow the business, the more I grow the business, the less I'm actually performing the service. However, in consulting, it could be all about you. But the problem of making a business all about you, which I have run into in both my businesses, is that people only want to work with you. And if you go on vacation, you're not making money, and you're only limited to your own capacity. So that's beginning considerations. Of course, as you scale down the road, other things come in. And then there's a hobby. I have started, when I was changing careers way back in 2005, I was really into running, and I thought, it'd be so cool to work for the New York Roadrunners. And then I talked to a friend who worked there, and he pointed out, when you work for the Roadrunners, you don't get to run the races. You have to be here at 3 a.m. to set up the race and serve all the other runners. And I was like, no, I think I want to do the running. I don't need to make it my career to work in sports events. So understanding which things that you just want to do them the way you want to do them, when you want to do them, and spend the amount of effort you want. That's a hobby. Just keep it in the hobby lane. It doesn't have to be a side hustle. You don't have to sell the product you're making. It can just be fun. It really just can't. Okay, so if I only give you one piece of advice, it's do good work and take care of your network. All right? For service businesses, especially coaching and consulting, people hire who they know and they like. They don't comparison shop critically in the same way we would if we were buying a dishwasher. So you have to establish yourself and you have to reinforce it. Nobody knows what you're doing and what you've done unless you tell them. Nobody's going to carefully read your LinkedIn profile. So much of it is word of mouth. You can advertise all you want, but almost all of your clients are going to come through word of mouth. So relationships are very important. And then you need to do good enough work that people care. Listen, relationships still are more important because I see a lot of people who do really mediocre work still getting business. It drives me crazy. But I tend to over-focus on creating an excellent work product, sometimes to my own detriment. So honestly, it's really more important that you could market and sell than create a great product. I'm not here to tell you what you want to hear. I'm telling you what actually happens in real life as somebody who's also set up a lot of people in their coaching and consulting businesses. I mean, for the last 20 years, I have been supporting other coaches and consultants as they establish their businesses with content, marketing, PR, systemization, pricing, all of it. Pricing is another really important thing, is you need to not price what you are making per hour in a full-time job. You have to make more money than that because you're not going to be working 40 hours really on doing the work. You're not going to have 40 billable hours per week necessarily. And now you have to pay for your whole compensation package. Whereas say your salary was $100K a year. Well, with your comp, maybe it was more like 135, right? People don't always think about what healthcare costs, what the time off costs, what the 401k contribution costs. Are you paying into Social Security anymore if you're independent? So these are all things that are super important to do the math on. And you're going to have a rainy day fund. What's your emergency fund? We were really, really lucky that there was some extra money that came in, from government during COVID, but some people weren't eligible for it and they went out of business. And, you can't necessarily claim unemployment if you're self-employed. So you have to have your own emergency fund, rainy day fund for slower months or if you get injured or something like that, right? So keeping it real here. First thing to do, I think, is separate your money. That's how I started my first business. I didn't set out to start a consulting practice. I just wanted to keep my money separate. So I created an LLC so I could open a separate checking account. Keep your money separate. It's really important. Also, you can write off a lot of different things. And it's just easier to pull all your transactions for taxes. Your taxes will get more complicated being self-employed or an owner. Keeping your money separated is important. And then a few years in, I started paying myself a salary instead of just pulling money out when I needed to. I started paying myself on the 1st and the 15th. And that made me hustle more to get my invoices in, and make sure the cash flow was good. So that was a really good discipline to develop. You also, if you're going to subcontract people or hire somebody, you got to learn to manage in a way that works for you and works for the result of your business and for maintaining and attracting clients. So that's another thing to think about. And then, yeah, I've said all the money things. Yeah, I mean, of course you don't necessarily need a website and like a photo shoot and everything. I think people waste a lot of money right at the beginning. I mean, you can do your own Squarespace site in a day, I think. I mean, I can make you one in a day, but I'm not going to. Websites have never been easier to make, so those things aren't hard, but please don't spend a bunch of money on that. It's just not worth it. Like, you don't really need a logo. If you're an independent consultant in a specialized area, no one effing cares about your logo. Nobody cares. Keep it simple. Your name is more important if you're going to be a solo act and it's about your thought leadership, you as a coach, you as a consultant. It doesn't really matter, honestly. It's still going to be word of mouth. And sometimes people knowing about you and not being able to find out too much can work in your favor. Some of us, I really wanted to establish some thought leadership when I started out. It wasn't as crowded as it is now because people weren't making online content like this 16 years ago. So I had to, I set up a website, I did a blog, I blogged for other places, I did some PR. I did those things to establish some thought leadership for legitimacy, because I was also really young. And I'm a woman, and I'm a woman of color. So, like, the odds are a little more against me than some other people. So that's another fun thing to contend with. The other thing is to niche out as much as you can, niche out. It's just, and I struggle with this too, because I'm like, I can help everybody. But the more focused you can be, the easier it's going to be to sell. I have a friend who helps Oregon area organizations with their tribal relations strategy. So specific. I know who to recommend him to. That's important, because if you don't have a team of salespeople, people need to know how to refer you and spread word of mouth. But if he just says, oh yeah, I can help with anything organizational, well, then maybe the word organizational is in my head and I'm like, well, I know 10 other people who do organizational consulting and they're more established and they work with this, and this person. So it's not going to look good on me if I refer someone without experience that I don't know how good they are, right? Because my reputation's on the line if I'm recommending somebody else. Also, it's more likely to overlap with something I do. So I'm not going to refer you to other people if I want the business for my business. Sometimes you do need to team up with people or you're full, but I'd rather scale my business and take on the extra business than be full, because I'm not here. I mean, Pregame, my company, is a lifestyle business, but the lifestyle I have created around my business can handle a lot of capacity. And I love what I do. And so I do it. I'm extremely disciplined about a 40-hour work week, being in the office 9 to 5, a little earlier on Fridays. I don't check my email on the weekends or nights. That's another thing, is you have to train your clients on how to communicate with you. One thing I tell people is, if your client is driving you crazy, it's your own fault. And this is something you kind of may have to learn over time, but it means you didn't pick the client well enough, like you didn't see the warning signals, which can take some intuition development, or you didn't onboard them correctly, like you didn't give them instructions for how to interact with you properly, or you trained them wrong. You started answering emails at 11 p.m., so you told them basically that I'm online all the time. So yeah, it's really up to you to manage your clients as well. What else would I tell you? I mean, make it fun. I think going back to the niche thing, like, who will understand your voice, who's interested in your voice is really important. Listen, I'm not saying I followed this. Like, I've worked with bunch of different sectors, but as I get better and more mature in my career, I'm very confident about my process and why my company's process is better than a lot of other places that we may be competing with, and I can speak to what working with us, what would make it better. Again, people don't comparison shop that much. But yeah, really understand the value of your time. Super important. I'm sure, I mean, I have millions of other things to say, but maybe it'll become a book at some point. Yeah, and like I said, tons of content. It's all available to you online. So you can go to ciarapressler.com, you can go to pregamehq.com to get access to all of it, or just Google me, Ciara Pressler. Thank you so much for listening. I do wish you amazingly well in your career, but a lot of that comes back to having the right information, being very honest with yourself about what you want, and taking wise steps to get there and following some of those consulting best practices. They're all online. You can find them. Go for it.